Hello, and welcome to the Thyroid Warrior Podcast. I'm Ebony, and I'm here as your wellness facilitator. I'm going to be sharing my experiences in managing Hashimoto's disease. I really hope that it'll help you on your personal journey. Keep in mind, however, this does not substitute for medical advice. It is only for your information and motivational purposes only. Now, let's get started. Hey everyone, I am so ready for this series. We're going to talk all about how to find an endocrinologist. And this is a very challenging subject because it's really hard to find a good doctor or primary care, let alone trying to find a specialist. But I want to share with you some of the things that I've been able to do in order to find some pretty good endocrinologists over the years. And now, because I'm in a new place and I am not going to travel an hour and some change to get to my old office, I'm looking for a new one. So when's the best time to share with you that process? Now. So, few reminders. I want to make sure that you are aware of my free Facebook community called Healthy Together. You can get into that group at ebonycolina.com/healthy together. Also, my thyroid guide is available to you, and there are some additional tools and tips within that guide that I won't be discussing on the podcast, but you will be able to get all of that information in that guide at ebonycolina.com/guide. I also want to give you guys a heads up. I will be changing some things around and doing a little bit of cleanup, a little bit of branding, but I want to give you the heads up that my handles and website will be changing in the upcoming weeks. And I am going to be sharing all of that information with you probably within the next week or so. I'm still fine tuning a couple of things, but I definitely wanted to make sure I gave you guys that heads up. And I'll be making sure that I go back and try to clean up as much as those links as possible, but we may end up saying from X point forward, this is where you'll be able to find me. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. So let's jump right into the episode and get going. So when you're looking for an endocrinologist, it's confusing. It is a lot of information, just like it's hard finding out information about our thyroid diseases and what to do, what not to do, supplements to take, what not to take, and everything in between. The same applies when it comes to looking for an endocrinologist. So I'm going to break these things down in the next couple of weeks and kind of walk you through how I have been able to find some really good picks. And the first thing is I always try to make sure I go to my health insurance's website to find a provider. Why am I suggesting that? Well, there have been times when I've gone online, I've gone to ZocDoc, I have tried to just do a quick search of different physicians and it'll say that they accept your insurance, but oops, just kidding. We haven't updated that page in a really long time. That provider no longer accepts your insurance. So before I even get excited about that, I just go straight to my health insurance's website and then I also call them. So I get a list of about 5 to 10 doctors and I will go through who are my top 3. And if those particular providers either have a wait list that's longer than 6 months or even 3 months sometimes, I'm like, tell me about the next one and the next one and the next one. So typically, I will only give them 3 names at a time, but I also keep that buffer just in case. And I'm really fortunate because I live in the DMV area, so I do have that opportunity to be able to see clinicians in different states, so that is good. However, if you don't have that luxury, highly recommend writing down the names of 5, sometimes 10. However, go with your top 3. That's who you're going to want to ask for when you're making that call. If you don't have health insurance, you're kind of open. So one of the things that I have done in the past when I did not have health insurance is I simply called the office and said, hey, I want to understand what is the out-of-pocket expense for an office visit with this particular provider for a new patient. What is the follow-up cost associated with seeing this provider? And do you offer a sliding scale in terms of payment? Now, you may be wondering, sliding scale, what is that? It's kind of exactly how it sounds. So sometimes based upon your income, some offices will allow you to pay based upon what you do make. It's not the case in every instance, but sometimes you'd be surprised. So I always make sure I ask. I have done this many, many times for my mother who has fibromyalgia. And I definitely try to help her kind of look around and figure out, okay, if your insurance, because she just has Medicare. So if that particular provider does not accept just Medicare, what additional out-of-pocket expenses would she incur and how could she potentially pay that? Which brings me to, if you understand that price associated with seeing that physician, ask them about making payments on it. And you're going to be considered what's called a guarantor. So you're going to be responsible for making that payment. But again, just right out the gate, just ask and don't be afraid to do that. That is why that front desk staff is there. They are usually trained in all of the things related to the business of that practice, and they have the ability to work with you. And sometimes the person answering the phone is also the office manager because they kind of have to pinch hit for each other from time to time. So you just never know. The next thing when you're looking for an endocrinologist is check their credentials, of course, check their reviews. And yes, you want an experienced endocrinologist. However, you also want to make sure that person is open to new and innovative research, new techniques, new forms of medication, supplementation, etc. Because things in endocrinology are constantly changing, as is anything related to the human body, particularly autoimmune diseases. So you want to make sure that they're on top of those things. And what I've often done is if I have, let's say, a faculty member, so let's say you go to or you live near a teaching hospital, and I'm thinking UPenn off the top of my head. So, for example, a lot of the clinical staff that you see in the office, they also partake in research. So are they producing research? Do they have articles in the last 5 to 10 years? A lot has changed in that time. So you definitely want to see like, okay, what type of content are they producing? And a lot of times it's kind of hard to siphon through that. So read the introduction and the conclusion. They will typically give you an abstract of sort. You might see that in the research article, and that will give you a kind of a good overview of what that particular research article is for. And that abstract and introduction is supposed to be written in plain language so that anyone reading it can easily understand it. So again, don't let that deter you from checking out some of those research articles. Sure, it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. However, those small snippets can really give you a good insight as to what that particular endocrinologist is studying, what their interests are, and it can also help to eliminate them from your choice, because a lot of times what happens is I may be looking for an endocrinologist that treats Hashimoto's disease. However, I might look up a provider and what happens is their only focus is diabetes. That doesn't work for me because I don't have diabetes. So if your research focus is that, it might be a little bit difficult for us to find common ground as it relates to treating my thyroid condition. Still a part of the endocrine system, of course, but their focus is something else. And sometimes when you do in fact end up calling, they might say, oh, Dr. Such and such, they only specialize in diabetes, or unfortunately, you've called a diabetes clinic. Yes, we understand that this provider is phenomenal. However, they only deal with patients with diabetes. And that has happened to me recently, actually, when I called to check in with a particular physician. The other thing that you want to make sure is if that provider is connected to that hospital still. Because again, sometimes those web pages are out of date. So don't get excited and say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet with this particular provider. And then you call and they're like, ooh, just kidding. Sorry, they left about a month ago. That sucks. That happened to me as well. So I just want you to be as armed with knowledge as possible, because it can be a little frustrating when you think you've narrowed it down and then you call and you're like, oh crap, just kidding. And that's why I say have a couple of endocrinologists listed. So that way you can say, okay, fine, not that person, not that person. Okay, here's my next best pick. And a lot of times that will really help you so that you're just not disappointed. So definitely call your insurance and or call the office to see what the out-of-pocket costs are. Ask about a sliding scale. Review the credentials of the endocrinologist. Make sure they have experience. Check to see if they do research. But another really important thing to look at are the reviews. Kind of. So yes, reviews are very, very helpful, and it can really come in handy when you're trying to understand the bedside manner of a particular endocrinologist. And I kind of hesitate here because we're all human, and sometimes people can have an off day. So I just think back to when I was initially trying to figure out what was going on with me, and I was a firecracker. I was obnoxious as well. I am not even going to lie. I am okay with putting that out there. I was angry because I was tired of being thrown around and flip-flopped every 5 minutes because no one could figure out what was wrong with me. And I knew that if I would have, for example, written a review at that time, everyone would have been the worst provider in the world. I hate everybody. So reviews are very helpful, and definitely pay attention if you see a common theme. Let's say, if you constantly see someone saying, oh, that guy's a jerk. Oh, he doesn't really listen. He was really on his phone or on the computer. And that you do want to pay attention to, but sometimes you just have to use your best judgment. And sometimes you just don't have any judgment to give. And that's okay too. But I just want you to give that provider a little bit of grace sometimes when, especially if you see like a lot of great reviews and then you see maybe one or two and you're like, that's interesting. Don't dismiss it, but definitely keep that in the back of your mind. And another way to determine the best endocrinologist to see is once you finally pull the trigger and say, all right, I'm going to make this appointment. I finally found that particular endocrinologist. I'm set. Call the appointment line. Now, one of two things can happen. One, you will go to what's called a central scheduling line, or if you're an employee of a hospital, you'll go to an employee line, or you might be able to get directly to the office. Now, here's the thing about that. The front desk staff is the first line of defense when it comes to a doctor's office of any kind. 9 times out of 10, they will be able to give you a very good indicator if a doctor is good or not. Now, here's an example. When I was calling to find a new primary care physician, I said, hey, I really want to see this doctor. What's been your experience scheduling for this particular provider? What have different patients said? And they're like, everyone always comes out of the office with a smile. They're always saying positive things about Dr. Such and such. Everyone is really, really happy working with that doctor. And I said, okay, that's great. What about you? Oh yeah, they're good. I don't have any complaints. They give me what I need. I always have the information filled out for follow-up appointments, etc., etc. Okay, cool. I feel a little bit more comfortable. However, if that person pauses ever so slightly when you're asking, that should tell you something. It has happened to me countless of times, and I wish I would have paid attention to that when I went to see a particular endocrinologist. I remember calling the line and making an appointment, and I was like, "Oh, well, that doctor. Okay, well, how is he? Oh, it's Doctor such and such." That's it. Yeah, they're good at what they do. So I've heard. What? Do you want to expand upon that? I mean, he gets the patients in and out. The appointments are pretty quick. That's it. Yeah, I don't really have a lot of experience with that particular doctor. I just work at the central scheduling line, so we don't get to interact with them that much. What have other patients said? Oh, not much. Nope. And nope. When I come out of seeing a good doctor, I am happy. I am almost frolicking and skipping out of the office. When I call to make the appointment, if you tell me that doctor is scheduling 3 months out, I will wait 3 months. And that doctor's schedule will be booked. So pay attention to those ever so subtle nuances when you're talking to the scheduler about making an appointment with the endocrinologist. So I really, really want to make sure that you have as much information as possible going in. So here's just like a quick rundown of what to ask about when you're talking to the scheduler. So how long is the average wait time to see this endocrinologist and why? What's their experience working with the doctor, meaning from a scheduling perspective? And if you're calling into a call center, just say like, hey, like what do folks typically say when they're making an appointment or scheduling with this doctor? Do you have a lot of people that come back a lot, or is it usually a one-time thing? And that will give you a good idea of what's going on. And then what you want to think about is once you've actually made your appointment, then what? What do you do then? Well, I guess you'll have to wait until next week to figure that out. But in the meantime, definitely make sure that you are signed up for my free Facebook community called Healthy Together. You can get there at ebonycolina.com/healthy together. Also, my thyroid guide is available. You can pick that up at ebonycolina.com/guide. Take care. Okay, thyroid warriors. Get out there and take things one step at a time. Remember, be great, reflect on your triumphs, and as always, be well. Take care.